All right, well, we're taking a break from drilling. I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce a couple of our USGS collaborators that are working on a DOE SBR funded project here at East River, also utilizing some resources internal to the USGS. We have Andy Manning on the left and Lyndsay Ball on the right. Andy and Lyndsay, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing up here?
Sure. We are obviously drilling a hole here. The total depth on it's going to be something like 250 to 300 feet. It's a bedrock hole. And I'm a hydrogeologist and geochemist. And we have different, and Lyndsay's a geophysicist, we have multidisciplinary interest in what we get out of this hole for data. My main interest is addressing the question of how permeable is this mountain block at depth of bedrock, because we drill so few of these kinds of holes. It's a really wide open kind of question, and it's really rare to get direct subsurface data from these types of places. So that really helps us build regional groundwater flow models of these kinds of mountain terrains and understand the whole plumbing of these mountain systems. Secondly, you've probably seen around here some of the mining, the abandoned mining. That's because there's a lot of sulfides in the rock. This is a mineralized area, we call it. So another big question is how this mineralization in the bedrock impacts the groundwater that discharges downhill and eventually goes into the creek. So this creates a metal loading situation. How extensive that is, where in the system those metals become mobilized, what climatic and other factors, hydrologic factors control those. We need these kinds of wells to actually see that process going on geochemically. So we're trying to get after both the water and the metals in the water and how they all are impacted by climate and other factors and how it impacts the surface systems that become water resources.
Excellent. So while the hole's open right now and you're recovering core, the plan is also to instrument it with sampling devices, piezometers essentially at different depths. So you'll be able to make seasonal measurements for the next, hopefully, 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
That's right. So we're going to use this one hole and have nested smaller piezometers at different depths. We'll be able to actually then see what the different heads are at different depths, the rate of infiltration, the change in the water chemistry at different depths, and see on a finer scale how the infiltration and the weathering of the sulfides happen.
Got it. Excellent. Thanks so much. So Lyndsay, with that open borehole, you've got some measurements planned for the next week. Why don't you describe those as well as some of the preliminary surface geophysical characterization you did before we even started drilling?
Sure. So to help us understand where we wanted to put this borehole, so we had some geologic context for where we would be in the ground relative to the other types of geology in the area, especially this intrusion that's behind us. So that's a heat source that potentially provides that mineralization, or the hydrothermal fluids that can mineralize those rocks. We were looking at the resistivity signatures of the rock, so that tells us how well electricity is conducted through it. You can imagine rocks with a lot more metal conduct electricity a lot better than rocks that don't have that much metal. So we use that information to try to understand the degree of alteration and the types of rocks that we're in as we go from on the intrusion and across. We also have lines that come up and down the valley to help us understand how representative where we're drilling is of the rest of the area around us, so we don't have just a point in the ground, but an idea of how representative that is of the region. Then once we have the hole open, we'll do a whole suite of geophysical logs in that open hole. So we'll be looking at, again, the resistivity or how well electricity moves through those rocks. We'll also be collecting televiewer logs, so that'll give us images both acoustically and using televiewers with a camera, a full color camera, to understand the fractures inside the rock. That gives us an ability to really look at where those fractures are that might be letting water move through the subsurface. We'll also be collecting full waveform sonic, spectral gamma. We'll be doing nuclear magnetic resonance. That's a technique that lets us look at the porosity and the water content and potentially the permeability of those rocks in the subsurface. So again, we're trying to get at how the water moves around and how that changes with depth and how that interacts with that mineralization. From there, we'll also be doing an airborne geophysical survey. So we're really working at 3 different scales. We've got surface scales, we've got borehole scales, and we've got the regional airborne scale that'll look across the East River Valley and help us see how representative Redwell is of other areas. That'll also be looking primarily at the resistivity of the rock. We'll also be looking at the magnetics. And in addition to that, we'll be looking at radiometrics. So that'll tell us a little bit about the nature of the types of minerals at the very near surface.
Thanks so much. And so one last thing to note here is that this location is fully embedded within our large high-resolution hydrologic model being led by Reed Maxwell and his team from the Colorado School of Mines. So as Andy noted, the drilling of such wells is pretty rare, but it's an incredibly unique opportunity to tie it in to a much larger watershed scale model that's really being undertaken at the core of the Berkeley Lab scientific focus area based here at East River. And so again, just a wonderful opportunity for collaborating agencies, USGS with DOE and national laboratory scientists to really link scales, both from kind of a process understanding of rock permeability, mineralization, and water flows through the system that are tied into predictive models describing those flows of water and nutrients and metals. Thanks to you both.